Get ready for truth and transparency from an ocean of liberal tears. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
From the national news media to your local news media, what is their agenda? And I can tell you, it's a very liberal agenda and sometimes even Marxist. Let's look at some recent national media coverage just on Thanksgiving alone. We have everything from NBC tweet having consider not buying a turkey, all the way to that genocide and violence is still on the menu from an MSNBC tweet. So what is the media trying to tell the people? What is their agenda? Then we go to the Washington Post, and we look at the Washington Post coverage of Waukesha. And it was the SUV that caused the tragedy, not the person. They took away the tweet from the Washington Post and redid it. And it says, what we know so far on the sequence of events that led to the Waukesha tragedy. So they left the SUV out. They're leaving this up to the people to decide what the news is. And if you're a liberal Marxist, that's their agenda.
You know, there's two ways to report events. You can do things through your own viewpoint, which we do here. We all have our perspectives, and there are very few 100% objective outlets out there anymore, but at least one of us is honest about the style of reporting that we are doing.
Right. It's clear to see that they're trying to pass off journalism, or what they call journalism, as reporting the facts with a clear bias to degrade American patriotism and rewrite history. So basically, if you are a white Christian, if you're conservative, if you're male, if you value traditional Christian values, you're bad. So the slant is clearly there. You can see it if you go to different news reporting outlets that are liberal or conservative. You can see the different slants that are there. It's quite obvious that the national and even here at the local level that they're trying to portray conservative Christians as bad people that are not good for our town and not good for our country. And,
at the national level, let's look at the Kyle Rittenhouse deal. How many times did y'all hear repeated through media pundits and then, if you get into Twitter, that Rittenhouse was a white supremacist and that he was there to cause harm to people of color? Everyone he shot, one, was in self-defense, and two, they were all white. So if he's a white nationalist, he's the worst white nationalist in the history of white nationalism.
And they also talked about how he was in illegal possession of firearms. They kept using that term, illegal possession, which was proven not to be true in court, that it was all legal.
The show here is fact and truth, and we take that and we put our opinions on that. And that's in our statement on our website. But when you look at some of the national media trying to take these events, even in Brazil, they thought the people that Kyle shot were black because of the reporting out of the U.S. So that's what they're trying to drill into the citizens here in the United States, and it's propaganda, plain and simple. And we take it from the national level to the state level, and you add in like ProPublica, Texas Tribune, and MSNBC will pick it up like Rachel Maddow does, and Don Lemon at CNN, and they'll just feed off each other. And here we have, and we'll go back to local, here we have local Hood County News with Kathy Cruz, and I brought up the Texas Trib article about elections.
And in that article, they again inserted their agenda into the facts. They said that the people here were upset about the results of the 2020 election, which was not the case. The people here were upset that we had a rogue elections administrator that kept refusing to follow Texas election laws.
And if you go back and watch the Commissioner Court videos, they're on YouTube, the Hood County Commissioner Court videos, go back and watch them. that was the issue the entire time. And that was the thing. The election administrator, Michelle Carew, kept saying that the Secretary of State says that she has the ability to do randomized ballots. And the issue that one of the commissioners brought up, Commissioner Eagle, was that the law states, it's in statute in black and white, that they have to be sequentially numbered. And the Secretary of State does not have the authority to make, enact, or change any laws. Only the legislator has that. So that law still stands. And that was the entire issue. But if you read any of those newspaper articles, they don't mention any of that.
And in that article, Jeremy Schwartz of Texas Tribune actually was the one that did that and reported on it. And he used the word anecdotal, which is not necessarily true or reliable, but based on a personal account rather than facts or research. But he liked to use the word anecdotal evidence. So when you have reporters, so-called reporters, that use the word anecdotal like Jeremy Schwartz does, like Kathy Cruz does, then you find that the data or the reporting or the facts are pretty much their own or whatever they want them to be.
Yeah, Kathy Cruz has a long history of telling one side of the story without ever mentioning the other side, or maybe very briefly mentioning.
And that's where we get into the difference between opinions and news. And the front headline seems to be an op-ed piece instead of the actual news for the Hood County News. And you can go back years and years. It's not the new Hood County News or the old Hood County News. It's all the same. But you can go back years and years and look at the headlines and see if it's opinion-based, anecdotal, or fact-based. So when we look at the agenda of the news media, let's look at the local aspect of it. And whether it's pre-Paul Hyde owning the news or post-Paul Hyde owning the news, we can look at articles like Saturday, August 31st, 2019. The headline is, Who's Next? County HR head suspended and escorted out. In that same article by Kathy Cruz, they have Fire Marshal Ray Wilson, the Library Director Karen Roscoe, Personnel Director Richard Aguirre, and Elections Administrator at the time, Cricket Miller. So here's the setup already from Kathy Cruz of Who's Next. And it's not because people have done the wrong thing. It's not because they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing and continue to do it. But it's because it doesn't fit Kathy Cruz's agenda or the media's agenda in 2019. And she's setting the people up for who's next, not what they have done wrong, but who's next because of the conservative people that are fighting against the liberal media agenda.
And once again, we see that same agenda. If you're conservative, you're bad for this town. It's laid out right here in this article. And instead of holding people accountable and getting rid of them for doing the wrong things like you should be doing, it's because we're conservatives and we're divisive and we're going after these people.
I remember at that time that this article came out, I kind of liked the headline because to me it said, hey, we're finally getting some accountability and transparency in our local government. This was shortly after Commissioner Dave Eagle took office. And I kind of chuckled when I saw the headline. I said, well, hey, we're cleaning things up. This is how it's supposed to go. When you have employees that are breaking laws or policies or procedures, you have to get rid of them.
You do, and then you go further on into this article, and the headlines underneath in the article are fearful atmosphere. There's your fearful agenda. The liberal media, the fear, the hate.
They love to fearmonger.
Yes. And you move on further, it says, quote, not political, where you're just making this political. Well, this is the government. This is county government with taxpayer money. It's a political subdivision. If you are doing wrong and you're being held accountable, it's time for you to go. And that's what the news media liberal agenda doesn't like.
And like you said, the paper has transferred ownership. They were forced to sell because they were put out of business. And under this new ownership, they have a new publisher. And when he came in, his name's Sam Houston, and he came in and said, oh, we're going to be just the facts. We're going to rein in this journalist that everyone kind of has a problem with. And none of that's really happened. They were good at hiding it for a little bit, but when Jim Jarrett was brought up on some trumped-up ethics accusations by the city manager, again, you have government employees who are not doing the right thing, trying to get rid of the elected officials that are doing the right thing. In the Hood County News, which is basically government-run media at this point, considering Paul Hyde is the city attorney, or at least holds that contract, and he also owns the Hood County News. So a lot of the reporting that we've been getting is going to be very pro-government. And what I mean by that isn't necessarily pro-government like good government, conservative government, government that's serving the people. It's pro-government employees, pro-government bureaucrats, pro-big government. Those trumped-up charges that they brought against Mayor Jim Jarrett, they were reporting on those as if they were facts, and then by the time the Ethics Commission met, he was cleared of all wrongdoing, and the attorneys were like, why are we even here?
Yeah, it's a microcosm of what we see at the national level with the media. It's a propaganda machine for liberal government.
And Courtney, the microcosm from the national media to the local media is exactly what's going on. And all we need to do is look at an article in the Fort Worth Weekly, September 18th, 2019, by Kathy Cruz. That is F the Media, EFF the Media, where she pens the article and talks about, I guess, people picking on the media. So take a look at it, folks. It's the Fort Worth Weekly, Kathy Cruz, September 18th, 2019, and read this for yourself. Look at it and see what you think about it. Get your own idea. When you look at the article by Kathy Cruz, it talks about some of her feelings, which is great. This isn't supposed to be a factual article, I don't think, because it doesn't read that way at all. But it says, the feelings of annoyance when readers phoned and asked to investigate certain things, the Tea Party shenanigans threatening jobs in county government, the anti-gay censorship attempts at our library. So these are things that go against traditional families, traditional values, and we know kind of where, from this article, that Kathy Cruz stands and why she writes what she writes.
Reading Kathy's column there in the Fort Worth Weekly, it was very indignant and, oh, poor pitiful me. I have these people calling, questioning the garbage, lies, and propaganda that I put out in the Hood County News every single week.
She does go into the attacks on the news media and that they're being threatened. The journalists are being threatened. I don't know when journalism school actually, stopped, but journalists being threatened. And nobody wants to be threatened, whether you write in the newspaper, or you're on TV, or wherever. Nobody should be threatened with their life. But because of some of the articles she's written about conservatives, our conservatives' lives have been threatened. So it goes both ways. And I know, and she quotes in here that she's been accused of, recently having an affair, misquoting people, unethical behavior, biased on her, and different things in this article, and she may have been accused of doing some of those things, but I can tell you that in 2015, when we had the gay marriage issue here in Hood County, she was all over that. CNN was. Everybody came in, national news media, and in Article 1, Section 32 of the Texas Constitution, it still states one man, one woman for marriage. And biblically, it's the same thing. But once again, over the top from Kathy Cruz on the gay marriage issue, and you can believe on whatever side you want, but as biblical Christians, you have to be able to tell the truth biblically on where the Bible stands and where the Word of God stands. None of us is perfect, so we have to deal with these issues, but one side is pro-family, the other side is going against all the family values and norms.
Yeah, and you see that not just with the marriage issue, but with the library issue. And we saw the book that was in the children's section and the pro-LGBTQ book that was found in the children's section. And we had a citizen here in Hood County ask for it to be moved to a different part of the library where young children weren't exposed to it. It was a violation of parental rights, walking into a library that our taxpayer dollars pay for to have stuff like that in there, and young children exposed to was a concerning issue for that parent. And the attacks on her started because of her asking to have this book removed. And we see this issue, like, how can you say you're Christian if you're not accepting of this type of lifestyle? But biblically, that isn't what it means to be a Christian. So you see this agenda of people coming in and trying to change what it means to be a Christian, instead of maybe it's just that they're not Christian. If your beliefs and your lifestyle and what your values don't line up with what it means to be a biblical Christian, then maybe that isn't the religion for you.
Maybe part of the reason that anyone gets threats, whether it's the journalists or the subjects about which they are writing, is because not the entire story is being told. If you, Kathy, as a journalist, are only putting out one side and not the other, that leads a lot of people to believe things that simply aren't true.
Just like readers need to have an objective point of view when it comes to journalism. True journalism is going to report all the facts from all sides. It's not going to be slanted with certain facts omitted and a personal agenda placed into that article. True journalism is what's lacking, and it's turned into a huge propaganda machine.
As we go on with Kathy Cruz's column here in the Fort Worth Weekly, she goes after Donald Trump in the Donald Trump tweets and uses different people in here to talk about Donald Trump's, talking about fake news and the media's all fake news. Well, the initial reason I think that Donald Trump started tweeting all the time is because he couldn't get the actual news media to print anything truthfully on what was going on. So he took that all over himself and began to tweet. And at that point, you didn't need the national media, did you?
Nope. You have a great platform with social media, and a lot of people go to social media for their news because they don't feel like they can trust these news sources anymore. It's not true journalism taking place, and so they find a different source to get their information from.
In Trump's case, he got to take it directly to the people, and anyone can, really. If you have an option to either play a game of telephone or give someone your exact message, it's wiser to give them your exact message than have it filtered through the biased liberal media.
It's like this show right here. We're trying to take it to you, the citizens of Hood County and Texas and the U.S., and we're going to bypass MSNBC, we're going to bypass CNN, the Hood County News, and we're going to give you facts and statements and our opinions based on that. And once again, go back and read the article. And towards the end of the article, and I brought this up earlier with Jeremy Schwartz from the Texas Trib, how he liked to use the word anecdotal. You take a look at Tracy Everbach at UNT that Kathy Cruz quotes, and it starts off, anecdotally, I can tell you that I hear from working journalists, including former colleagues and former students who are in the industry, that the constant criticism and harassment has an effect on the mental health and also causes them to fear for their safety, she said. So Kathy Cruz is quoting another journalist, I guess professor at UNT, and it's all anecdotal again, things that they hear, that she hears, that they hear, that they do. So when we talk about journalism, which I believe is dead at this day and age, you have to look at the quote, journalism, and the agenda of the journalists, the agenda of the media that gets repeated from program to program to program. But what we really find is it's good versus evil. And that's what it's come down to, folks, and what you believe as an individual from the propaganda coming out of MSNBC, CNN, Hood County News, Texas Tribune. How much are you going to believe? And it's all sugar-coated because they don't just have things about gay marriage. They don't have things about LGBTQ. The Hood County News also covers things like football scores. They cover basketball scores. They cover events in Hood County. They cover good things and things that are going on in the news that people need to be aware of. But it's coded with an overall agenda of the liberal media. So what I would like to see is the people that are actually Christian conservatives, they have moral values. We're all not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But you have the moral compass. You are for family values. You're for family traditions, religious liberties. I would like for those people to stand up and not be the quiet Christians that we see here around Hood County. The Christians need to be vocal. Whenever they see something that is not the truth, not the Word of God, they need to speak out and stand up, but do it out of love, truth out of love, and quit being a quiet Christian.
Yes, freedom of religion is something that this country is founded on. It is one of the pillars of our country. And what we see coming out of the liberal media is an agenda to try to change what it means to be a Christian. If you're really a Christian, you can't speak out against LGBTQ. Or if you're really a Christian, you can't speak out against BLM because we have to love everybody. We have to accept everybody. And when you have that agenda kind of taking over, it's kind of trying to change what it means to be a Christian. It is absolutely vital that Christian people speak out and say, no, this is not what it means. Biblical principles say this. And as a Christian, this is what we believe. And it takes courage. It takes bravery to speak out. And it might be scary at first, but it's absolutely vital that Christians start to speak out and safeguard their religion.
Conservative Christians can no longer afford to stay quiet. It's going to take a lot of courage from individuals. It's going to take a lot of courage from churches and other organizations. And it can all start with you.
We talk about division sometimes, division in the community. There's division in the Bible. There's persecution in the Bible. There's hatred in the Bible. But to have unity and peace, we need the truth, but the truth in love. So when Christians stand up for the truth, you do it in love. You still stand up for the truth, but we need the Christians to stand up for religious values, and that means not just the people. We also need the churches to stand up and stand behind the biblical principles that they preach every Sunday. And please stand up for your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ against the lies from whether it's the news media, whether it's a different agenda, but please start standing up. Shark Show out.